Hey, what's up, you guys? I'm Ann Richmond, aka Hearthsinger, the head bard in charge around these parts, and you made it. You made it here to Hearthsinger Games, and today I have a fabulous guest for all of you to meet, or maybe you know her already. It's Ellinor Dilorenzo. Say hey, Elli.
I like that I'm fabulous now, Anne.
I mean, you were always fabulous. It was the fabulosity lived inside you all along.
That's true. But I feel like I need to fix my nails now, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't have...
Maybe a wig. Yeah. That's a whole other video. But what we wanted to do today, I guess, is give you a little window into our lives. Because Elli and I, well, we chat a lot. But it all started about 6 years ago. And since then, we have, within the last year, begun to work with each other over at the Glass Cannon Network on Androids and Aliens, which is a great Starfinder show that they do that Elli is on. But that just really gave us a chance to cement our friendship more, to talk more, and now we can't be stopped.
Yeah, exactly. We literally can't be stopped. It's like, hey, Anne, you have 30 seconds, and then 2 hours later, it's like, oops, and then our phones will shut us off.
Our phones often are like, no, you hang up. Like, but it's important, I think, for us to feel like women do lift each other up, especially because, you know, we're women in social media, we're women working in the tabletop RPG space, and who just understands and shares a lot of experiences regarding what it's like to be a professional woman in what tend to be male-dominated spaces. So let's get into it, Elli. Let's share our thoughts with the wider gaming community.
Great.
Roll it! So Elli came here with questions from me, the Sherpa, the master of professionalism. So Elli, by the way, guys, this was Elli's idea to do this video. So get you a friend who makes content for you, I guess. I can't recommend it enough. But Elli, why did you want to make this video?
In general, as performers, but also as women, like you said, in this male-dominated world, we do end up in these situations where we're a little bit insecure about things. Having had so many conversations with you about it, it's been so helpful to listen to someone who knows how to talk. I mean, I'm Swedish, so I mean, it makes sense that I don't know how to phrase things always in English. How to sort of maintain your integrity, getting sort of what you want, while also not coming off as the woman who creates drama, so to speak, which I find that I'm usually that person. And so we've had so many conversations about that, and I kind of wanted to share that with the world, because I do think especially now with COVID, a lot of people do find themselves with potentially new career prospects because it's a new world. And I also reached out to my community if they had any questions regarding this, and I've had some great questions being asked.
Your community sent us questions?
Exactly.
Amazing. Elli's community is awesome. I also have a Discord community, and you'll find links to both in the info section below the video.
For example, if someone is out there and like, I would like to pivot into TTRPG careers, you know, how would I go about it? Like negotiating and just, you know, standing your ground a little bit. And I've always looked up to you in that sense. So that's why I thought you would be the perfect person to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm down. Let's hit those questiones.
Some questions to begin with, like how did you find the bravery to start a career in this particular business, and what would be some beginner's steps in your mind?
First of all, how dare you is what I hear.
How dare you even attempt this, you know?
I think the first step is that you do dare. You do dare. There is everything in the world that tells you that this is a terrible idea and you should not do it, because it's a really competitive space, and it's a place where people are truly passionate and truly care about what they're making. And so if there is any piece of you that is false and that is not ready to share your authentic self, I would say you're not ready yet. But if you are ready to share your authentic self, then join the parade.
Exactly.
As far as how to get started, I think it is to erase from your mind the idea that people that you admire don't want to hear that you admire them, and also don't take you seriously because you're just some other person. But if you can find some way to start a conversation that's a little bit more deep than I loved your game, I think that's a great in. And that's certainly what I did. I was a big fan of everything that Penny Arcade has put out as far as like their web comics, and they worked on this side project called Lookouts, which became the Daughters of the Ironwood, which then became a Thornwatch board game. And I sort of befriended them through that process because I cosplayed from it. And then they were excited about that, and they saw that I was a person of passion and authenticity. They saw that. And people can sense from a mile away when you just want a piece of what they have versus when you want to relate to them about what they've created.
And show a real interest in what they're doing, because, that's attractive for most people, I would say.
And step 2, you have to build a portfolio, and you have to look creatively at what you've done before and say which part of this is going to apply. Don't be afraid to look back at what you've done and see yourself differently than what your job title was.
Yeah, and to pivot off of skills, like I guess I had a little bit of a different start in terms of because I literally auditioned, and so my background is in acting, which is a similar problem in that it's the worst idea you could ever have to become an actor.
You're like, this was already a terrible idea.
Yeah, exactly. But what I've been telling people who wants to perhaps start a podcast or start a YouTube channel or anything that's in the realm of entertainment is to work on those skills of like you said, being authentic, but also being able to perform it authentically. People love seeing realness, even if it is acted. And I think that's a common misconception, is that actors are liars. But it's like, no, they just find a way to imagine things so vividly that it becomes real for them and authentic in that way. So, and I would work on those skills if you're looking to become like an entertainer.
I also come from an acting background, but I was a tour guide at Radio City Music Hall for about 5 years. And amazing. That helped me really hone exactly what you're talking about, which is practiced performative authenticity. And if it helps you to think about it more like learning how to be a good presenter, then use that.
Yeah. Well, you and I have been working on a different project, our podcast, Lost Mountain. And my
links
background
below in the comments section.
Exactly. Plug. I have background in computer science, so I was able to build a website for it without, having to flush out $6,000 for that. And then also like I have an interest in editing stuff. So like all these skills can become unbelievably valuable that you might think like this has nothing to do with my acting career. Like when I studied freaking JavaScript when I was 20, I was like, this will not further my acting career at all. But now it really has, because it's like it saves you money. So
it absolutely does when you're looking to launch these projects. Being as skilled as you can be in as many possible things is just incredibly important.
Yeah. We've gotten a bunch of questions that are similar in nature of like how to deal with, for example, toxic tables. And
sure.
If we've ever been exposed to uncomfortable and inappropriate assumptions based on our gender, and also like should you try to lecture people or should you just leave, things like that. And I mean, you and I can obviously only talk from our own experiences and opinions on this, so I don't see myself being able to be a representative for all women.
I mean, this is just be clear, right? This is our conversation. These are our experiences, and what might work for me might not work for Elli either. So it might not even work for you, but we'll be as honest as we can be in terms of what our kind of thoughts are on these things.
My general opinion is life is too short. So if you find yourself at a table that gives you there's no reason for you except that to be at that table, except that it's a bunch of friends and you're just playing a casual game. The only time you meet is at the table, and you find that this group, it kind of sucks in one way or another. I would just leave, honestly. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I would not waste my time and energy to try to change people unless there's something so unbelievably inappropriate that I think like you have to change this behavior because otherwise you'll end up in jail or like, things like that. But
hey, that's not cool, but also it's illegal. But if these are truly your friends, like if this is a close group of friends that you're going to see other places, you will never not feel hurt by them. And so in that way, it is worth having conversations with those people, right?
That's true. That's true. Actually, yeah, that makes sense because exactly, if it's your friends.
That kind of panic where you're like, I'm uncomfortable, I'm in danger, what do I do about this? And I find that so many people, when they're stuck in that, will talk to literally anyone but the people who are at that table with them because they just don't know what to do. Is it worth it to just have it out or leave? And I think no D&D or insert any other TTRPG is better than bad D&D. You can find somebody else, I promise you.
We framed this a little bit like specifically what it's like to be a woman in this.
Sure.
We got a couple of questions from men asking what can I do to be a good ally as a male tabletop player. I have a bunch of opinions on that too. Spoiler alert, but I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. Oh God, now I'm terrified. No, I think
your wrong opinions and your wrong thoughts. No.
That's me wrong in a nutshell. Yeah. The big thing that I want, and again, I'm going to really harp on that. This is what I would want, is to be aware. Don't use the excuse of, oh, well, I'm just a guy. I'm not as sensitive to like social dynamics as you. That is the biggest cop-out in the world. It is your responsibility to be kind to other people, to be decent to other people. If somebody is expressing themselves in a moment like what we were just talking about in the previous question, sometimes what you can do if people start getting defensive and interrupt is to be like, well, wait, let's figure out what everybody really means. Like just get everybody to take a breath. I, Anne, do not need you to explain for me how I am feeling. Help them have a voice by halting interruptions.
Another stereotype we get is like no woman wants to be the bothered, like the woman who causes conflict and being emotional, which is always something that scares me. And I hate conflict in general, so I just try to avoid it. But it's also at the same time, I try to also give people the benefit of the doubt. Most people I meet in this community are so freaking awesome and kind and wants to be good. Sometimes you mess up. Like sometimes you say something that didn't come out the way you meant. I do that all the time. And so I try to always have it in the back of my head. And like, did this person really mean it that way? And if they did, and if I really think that they were out to get me, I would try to find the courage in me and like confront them about it, because I think if that person didn't mean it that way, they would like an opportunity to at least, apologize or explain themselves, I mean, I don't have any problems with jokes, as long as I don't think that this person actually means it. If you know that what I'm saying, but that is different for every table. And you will have to trust the people you play with, because if you don't have that trust, so I wouldn't go to a con and tell the jokes, you know. And so I don't think it's always like this person is a super racist or a sexist behind the door, closed doors, but like as soon as they're out in the open, they change. I think it's more like you have to sense the room. Like you have to learn how to what's going on in this particular table, what's going on in this room. Like are these jokes appropriate here, and so that's sort of how I navigate life in general. And I mess up too. Like I might not there are certain jokes I just never tell and I don't find them funny. Like I said before, if you don't mean it as badly as it might have come off, I'd rather just tell you and then like, let's move on. And like, don't do that in the future, versus being like, I will never talk to you ever again, you fucking monster,
I am very anti-cancel culture as a human.
Same.
And here's the reason. If people aren't allowed to learn and grow and change, then what is the fucking point?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like it discourages people to grow. It makes people just feel shitty. And it's also very hypocritical because literally no one will have had like a completely sinless life.
What you're doing in these cases oftentimes is it's the people who have been voiceless for so long lashing out and being like, we deserve a spot at the table. And sometimes that can happen in a way with people who deserve to be called out, right? That the people who are observing that call out use it as ammunition to say, like, this was our space, you're just living here rent free now, or whatever it is, you know?
For sure.
And that's not okay. Let me be very clear that is not okay either. But I think the problem that cancel culture has is that it pushes so hard on that dichotomy between people who are grasping onto their fandom so tightly. And this is not just TTRPGs, right? This is also like something I see in the Star Wars fandom a lot too. They love something so much that they're angry about it and they're fiercely protective of their own personal point of view because to them that is gospel, that is how it is, and we are asking them to change something that's been written in bedrock. But like, we play a game that's about improv and going with the flow, so everybody needs to relax. The people who are holding on need to relax and open up the door. The people who are coming, who have been there, knocking at that door, banging at that door, saying, we are here, they deserve to be let in. But both parties have to learn how to freaking talk to each other. And also, if people show themselves to just be toxic AF and using this as an excuse to be hateful, they deserve to be shown the door by both groups of people. You can't have wolves and sheep living happily together.
No matter what Zootopia said.
You can't have wolves and sheep living together because the sheep are going to get eaten. The sheep will never feel safe. So if you start changing your views and wanting to bring different voices and different people to your table, be aware that you can't just be like, that's just Al, he's like that. Al can't play if he's going to be like that.
I fortunately have never really had like a bad experience with this. Like, I haven't been at many tables though, so and I've never played at cons.
Well, that's where you're missing it, because I've only almost ever had those experiences at cons, where it's just like an asshole guy being a dick to be a dick, and I kind of think it's on the responsibility of the event holders, whoever's running the game, whether it's the GM, to say like, you can't talk like that, get out. I think there should be like a zero tolerance policy. And unfortunately, I think a lot of it just goes unreported and under the radar because, like you said, nobody wants to cause a commotion.
Drama, yeah.
It's not that women haven't been playing TTRPGs till recently.
Right.
Like that is a common misconception. A lot of what happens, in my opinion, when you have a closed community, right, that is so much the same type of people for so long, that people get used to behaving in a certain kind of way behind closed doors because they're just, guys being guys, or locker room talk, or whatever you want to talk, like call it, right? And I think that happens in a TTRPG space where people are like, oh, I'll tone it down for you now that you're at the table, right? When like, you should be judged for speaking that way behind closed doors. And maybe you disagree with me. Let me know in the comments if you do. I'm totally open to hearing it. But like, I don't think closing a door to get a free pass to just be a real asshole and be gross is a thing. And so I think another thing you can do as an ally is, if, much like the New York City subway, if you see something, say something, whether or not there's a woman at the table. It is important that you start to recognize what these telltale problematic, depictions of women or depictions of other, types of people that are not cis, white, heteronormative people at the table. And also as a GM, right, to look for the places where you can be more inviting just in your storytelling. One thing I realized that I did and started taking responsibility for in my stories is I realized that I only said when someone was black, right? It's not that I never made black characters, but I never described someone as being white.
Oh, that's a good bias to be aware of. Yeah.
I created like an otherness, or an exoticism. I like really started thinking about it, and I was like, that's something I need to work on. And so I encourage you, for as long as you've been GMing, we can all improve, we can all do better. And there are people out there having these conversations online. Google is free, everybody.
Yeah.
Go ahead, do your research, watch these conversations. I will link some important ones that I have watched in the info below so that you can go check them out.
Okay, Sergeant Farva sent in this question, which I feel like is the main reason you and I have been talking for so much, because it's for me specifically. But like for negotiations and self-advocacy in general, knowing your own self-worth would seem to be very important. So how can one go about identifying and internalizing their strengths and better understanding their self-worth to better negotiate and combat failing victim to the imposter syndrome? I'm very nervous about being confident and like, I would like to do this and do this and do that. Like, you knew when we worked on Lost Mountain, I was terrified for like 2 months. I'm like, I shouldn't do this. Never mind. I should jump off a cliff, swim back to Sweden, and never talk to anyone.
There was a lot of me putting my hands on the sides of Elli's head, figuratively, because it's a pandemic out there, and saying, shh, sweet baby angel. You gotta let us get to the table at the very least. And then when the table was over, we were like tearing down all the, tech stuff. And she was like, well, maybe we won't have video. Maybe we won't do this at all. Who knows if it'll even happen? And I was like, shh, sweet lamb, sweet baby girl. It's gonna be okay. But yeah, that is a thing you do if you're looking for confirmation.
Yeah, exactly. Elli, that is a correct assumption of your behavior. Mm-hmm. You're the opposite, in my opinion. And you have a way of doing it without coming off as the quote unquote like braggy, and like it's like you have a way to still come off as humble, but still.
Well, thank God for that. Am I right? No.
No, but like you know your strength, and you're not afraid to tell the world about it, like constantly.
I put on my bra one boob at a time, just like everybody else. But oh my God,
I'm like, do you? And I'm like, wait, do we?
Yeah. When it comes to gatekeepers, I was my own gatekeeper because I only saw myself as a really passionate fan. I did not see myself as a content creator for a very, very long time until somebody hired me to be a content creator. And even then I was like, well, I'm only good at this because they're giving me all this support to do it. And now that I'm doing it on my own, I have come to realize that like all of these things, teaching myself how to edit, teaching myself how to use Twitch, these are all like marketable skill sets. I forged my own future, Elli. And so you have to learn how to celebrate that and think it's cool. And it can be very difficult. I have a lot of room for growth, but my biggest strength, I think, is regularity. I realized recently that like I've put out videos on YouTube and 3 or 4 streams a week on Twitch for over 6 months on YouTube and almost the entire year on Twitch, and I'm really proud of that.
I feel attacked. Oh, sorry.
You have to learn how to celebrate your strengths and identify what is good about you, because the world is built to crush you. The world is built to tell you you're not good enough. But there's also this part about being a woman where you feel like, well, they're not going to accept when I ask for X amount of money, even if they would pay a man for that, because I'm a woman, right?
Right.
And I have started talking about it with my friend Emily, who I just love so much. It
sounded like you made her name up.
No, with my friend Emily Lingler. That's like what GMs do when they're like, what's that bird's name? And you're like, Fringles Snarch. Like
it's a blackbird. Shut up.
Blackbird, shut up. Play the game. Enjoy the parts of the game that I prepared for you and nothing else. Look away. Everything else fades to gray like Silent Hill. You don't even see it. It's barely there. No, Emily is very real, I assure you, despite claims that may or may not have been made by Ellinor Dilorenzo. But she and I have talked a lot about being in the industry. She has worked as an artist management person with Level Up Dice in the past, and now she is the director of licensing over at Roll20. Like, she is just another awesome lady powerhouse, and we talk the same way that I talk to Elli. And one thing that we've really harped on is walk in there like you have white male privilege, and normally no one notices. So
right.
That's not to pull other people off the hook for their behavior. Rather than assuming that people are going to call you out for being too firm or too managerial or too bold, right, as a woman, and you need to wait your turn or whatever the case may be, let them say those things, but they can't say them if you don't act.
That's true. Oh, that's true.
So
what a cheat.
It's a cheat. Yeah, there's the cheat code for you. You got to walk in there like you have the intense privilege of a white male.
Yep.
When it comes to like breaking in and, you know, not being afraid to ask to be paid for things, like, you just have to be too stupid to stop.
Yeah, like, that's also true. That's true.
You
that's
have
true.
to want it enough that you're willing to like push through the part of you that feels awkward about asking what you're going to be paid. And I struggle with that all the time. I have literally gotten into writing on TTRPG projects and then been like, oh, they said they were going to pay me, but we never talked about what they were going to pay me. I was just so excited to be invited to the table that I just never asked, which is like my worst quality, because as soon as somebody says, and we have this great idea, I'm like, yes and, yes and, yes and, yes and. And I just like start coming up with crazy things to the point where, like, I think Elli is probably laughing because this happens with Lost Mountain all the time, where I'll be like, we could do this, or we could do this, or we could do that. And she'll be like, Anne, calm down. This is where you don't have to be a producer. Like, thank you, but also calm the F down.
Yeah, I mean, because because for me, like, I don't have money to pay you, and I know what you're worth, and so that's also a thing. Like, I guess there's something to be said for friends doing favors, of course, and you can there's a lot of favors to, like, if you want to start off from that aspect, like if you want to produce a movie or you want to put up a play, and like any creative endeavor that's going to cost a shit ton of money, I don't think there's anything wrong in like asking your friends for favors, and then be willing to pay those favors back eventually, or give them money, you know. But like, all you can say is no. But having people you don't know as friends having to do free stuff for, that's I think is a little tacky.
If you're gonna say that you want to be paid, then you have to be able to answer the question when people reach out and say, what's your hourly, or how do you charge for X?
Yeah. And like, you will probably burn yourself a little. Like, you will probably underprice yourself sometimes, and sometimes you might overprice. You know, like, so it's a learning skill as well.
I think one of the best things in the world is Patreon. But I spend a lot of time thinking about, like, how can I provide enough value that these people feel that when they spend this money every month that they're really getting something from it, without offering too much. And so some of that is, if you're getting ready to start something like that, or a Ko-fi, you know, looking into what you're promising people and making sure you can deliver on that before you set prices is like huge. Don't just be like, yeah, if we get $3,000, like, we'll be able to do this, because you don't necessarily know that unless you do the math and think about, you know, important things like that. And also, when you're setting prices, just in general, for a work you might be asked to do outside of like a subscription-based thing like Patreon, you have to think about, you're going to have to put away like 40% of that for taxes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and on that as well, like, my producer friend, she always makes her budget, but then she also adds, like, this is the actual cost, and here's my discounted rate for you. But then it's like, so everyone can see what it actually costs, and then, like, but I'm doing this for 50% less because I like you or whatever. But then, you know, no one can ever say, like, what, but you made this super cool thing for $500 last time. Why is it $5,000 now? And it's like, because that's what it actually cost you. And knowing that money is a tricky issue for everyone. Like, no one likes to talk about money, even though it's the one thing we need. All right, and I think we need to wrap up because we've talked a lot for like an hour in the uncut version of this. But I do think this was a great conversation.
I feel like it's a little bit like the beginning of a series. Like, I feel like we could, if people just want to hear what our phone calls are, with names redacted.
Exactly.
No, then this is a great place to be. I hope you guys, if you have questions for us that you want to see answered in the future by myself, by Elli, please head into the comments section, drop them there. I am always on here every single week putting out videos basically related to TTRPG and nerd culture. But I would love to have you here. Please give me a like on this video if you enjoyed it, a subscribe. And I know this is a little bit longer format than my other videos that have been on here, so let me know what you thought. If you are interested in joining me on stream to have your questions answered live when I can't think about them, join me on Twitch, twitch.tv/HearthsingerGames. I'm there on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays doing streams for your viewing pleasure. And of course, as mentioned before, I do have a Patreon. Check it out. I just added a bunch of tiers that allow you to get a seat at my table. Yes, I could be your dungeon master. Whoa! So please go ahead and check that out. See if anything sparks joy for you. And Elli, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Anne. I love you, and I'll probably call you in 30 minutes.
Okay, talk then. Bye, guys.
All right, bye.